I went ahead and did was I went ahead and started the recording and stuff too. I've got it propped up on here, so I might need to hold it when I do it. But we're going to go through multiple different defensive coverages today. But in reality, I wanted to first and start off by talking about a couple different techniques and some goals of quarterbacks. Kind of use this as like each week. Like today, I'll talk about like cover one and cover zero and the different variations. Those are going to be very simple. You probably already know them, but we're going to talk about those tonight. And then next week we'll get into the cover two, like the two high safety stuff, and then we'll get into solo high safety stuff the weekend after. But I want to spend a lot of our time talking about some of these techniques with goals that we have to have as a quarterback and different ways to gather data to put us in the best situation to make pre-snap reads, to make post-snap reads, and things like that. So all this is stuff that from my NFL camp experience, from playing arena football, all this is stuff that I've learned from a lot of these different places. And I'm recording it, so obviously you're taking notes now, but I can send this to you once I get it put back in. So we can obviously go back, have it, so you can go back and listen to whatever we have here. But feel free, interrupt me, stop me if you have any questions and things like that, and we'll go from there. But first, I want to talk about the 3 goals of quarterbacks. So obviously, we talk about being a good leader. We talk about all that kind of good stuff. But from playing the position, we have 3 main goals.
Okay.
All right. 3 main goals. So goal number 1. Goal number 1, make good decisions. Oops. They're not spelled tonight. All right, so you tell me, how can we make good decisions as a quarterback?
Like you said earlier, pre-read before you snap, walking up, reading. Yeah, that's what I think. Like pre-reading is like the best way.
So there's a lot of different ways that a quarterback can actually make good decisions. Obviously, the easiest way that any of us can think about is obviously don't throw interceptions, don't turn the ball over, and know where the ball's going and get it to those playmakers. But you can also make good decisions in the run game. How do you make good decisions in the run game? Obviously, you don't fumble the football first and foremost, but on reads, you make the right read. You look at defensive fronts whenever you start getting more ability to change plays and stuff. Like if you see a bear front, we're running inside zone to that. We know we can't run inside zone to a bear front. So being able to audible out and switch to a play, or going out and using a Dell technique that we'll talk about here in a second, to be able to look at the depth, eyes, and leverage of the corner, and being able to say, hey, if I see 2 guys over 3 receivers, I know I can get a screen out there instead of running this like inside zone into a bear front. So we can take care of the football and make good decisions in more than just throwing to the open guy or even anticipating throws, which is where we need to get to next. But secondly, that kind of plays into what I was just saying, but no turnovers. So make good decisions, no turnovers. So obviously keep it simple, stupid. Like no turnovers. Can't fumble the ball. Can't whenever we're going through rides and read options and handoffs, can't be getting it outside of their belly and having the ball tumble onto the ground, lose possessions. That's how we lose football games. The way offense is being played today, we have to hold the ball as long as humanly possible by the end of the 60 minutes. Football game's 60 minutes long. We got to have time of possession. That gives us the best chance at scoring if we have the ball more often. We can't give away free possessions to the other team, because then more likely than not, we're 1, putting our defense at a disadvantage, but 2, the more possessions they have, less chance we have to win a football game. There's more momentum swings when that happens, and we don't need to give up momentum swings. But third, we need to create big plays. So make the 3 main goals of quarterbacks: make good decisions, no turnovers, make big plays. So how do we make big plays? we make good decisions and we don't turn over the football. We take what the defense gives us and make the routine play. So I came from an air raid offense. I came from an air raid offensive scheme in college. One thing our coach preached to us was make the routine play. One of our routine plays in our offense was throwing a fade ball, was throwing a we called it 90, but like throwing 4 verticals, throwing the outside hole shots, throwing the inside seams for completions. Those are big plays. And as we talk about in our training sessions, like those things are still hard throws to make because if we're not mechanically efficient, we can throw the ball left or right with balance issues. We could throw it high or low based on posture. And so, but those in our offense are the routine play. So being able to hit open comebacks, being able to hit the digs with 2 high safeties, those are big plays that get momentum on your side. And then obviously we talk about in the run game, things like that. You're very athletic, very mobile. So being able to get you involved in the run game and stuff is huge too. Quarterbacks need to do that because they are the leader of the team. They do need to create momentum swings. And if we don't turn the football over and we get more offensive possessions and make big plays, that's momentum in our favor for 60 minutes. And typically that winds up with a win. So any questions on those big 3 main goals?
Nah.
Okay, perfect. Because I knew that was going to be pretty self-explanatory, but wanted to make sure we talked about that before anything. All right. Well, let's get into a couple different techniques and talk about these things. So we talk about a quarterback's ability to be able to read defenses and throw with anticipation. Well, how do we do that? So everything starts off with these 3 main things here: data, gather, and plan. Okay?
Okay.
So data, we live in an analytics-driven world now. Even high school teams, like what you've got going on down there in Peachtree City, you're going to have data on the other team. Your coach is watching plenty of film to say, hey, in 3rd and long, they're going to sit back in cover 4 and try to force us to throw it underneath. Everybody knows what everybody's going to play in situational football now, so we have data available to us. So quarterbacks need to be able to digest that data and understand what's happening to them, because at the end of the day, if you understand what's going to happen to you in a certain play, you start having the answers to the test before the test even occurs. And then that's where your brain can speed up. You can start making quicker reads, make even better decisions. And then obviously that helps from a college recruiting standpoint because you're now a level ahead of everybody else mentally, to where they feel like you're not necessarily a finished product, but on the way mentally. So we got to gather data. Then we have to gather information when we're on the field. So how do we gather information on the field? We'll talk about it here when we talk about the 3 C's and we talk about the Dell technique. Okay? So I'm going to skip over that and come back to it. Plan. We have to have a plan for every single play that we have. So that's running through mental reps before the game, playing the game before the game so that you can play the game and replay the game after the game and understand what you did right, what you did wrong, what can improve, what you did well and you can praise yourself for. We need to be able to do that. So data, gather, and plan. All right. So when we talk about planning, let's talk about the Dell technique before we go into our actual coverage study. So what is the Dell technique? I kind of mentioned it a little earlier. Oops. There we go. All right. Dell technique. So I mentioned it earlier, and this is one of the easiest ways, in my opinion, to figure out what defense defenders are in based on your eyes going to one person every single play. Who do you think that one person is?
Safety.
So safety is great to tell us what different options we have, and I'm going to teach you your eyes need to go to the safety first, but our eyes second need to go to the corner. All right, so we can put our eyes on a cornerback. So the Dell technique talks about getting our eyes to corners. So what does the Dell technique stand for? It stands for depth, eyes, leverage, and stance. So leverage and stance is the L. All right. So depth, eyes, and leverage and stance.
Okay.
All right. So I'll go ahead and talk about some of these. So let's look at depth. When we talk about the coverages that we're talking about today, the cornerback's depth is going to be almost the exact same, regardless of that, because we're talking about two main man coverage type defenses. So depth, you can have multiple different levels of depth. You can have a guy that's going to sit and press. You have a guy that can maybe sit about 5 yards off and play what we call sit collision, which is still a type of man coverage, where he's just going to sit squatted and wait on somebody to come to him and try to collect him and slow him down. But then we also have off coverage, which is cornerbacks 7, 8, 9, 10 yards off the ball. And typically, if that's the case, they're probably playing zone coverage because they're not going to be able to man up anybody from 10 yards in depth. So after we get our eyes to the safety and see, do we have a 1 high or a 2 high shell, our eyes need to go to the corner because the corner tells us what coverage they're in. So there's depth. How far off the ball is the corner? Okay. Now eyes. Obviously it's harder to see through the helmet of a defender, but we can still see guys' eyes based on where the face mask is pointing. So if I'm sitting here playing press man coverage, and let's just say there's a receiver right in front of me, what coverage do you think I'm running if my eyes are straight dead on him and I'm press coverage?
Man.
Yeah, man. Okay. Now, what if my butt is turned to the sideline and I'm backed off maybe 2 or 3 yards, but my eyes are like halfway on the receiver, but halfway in the backfield? What type of coverage do you think I'm playing?
Zone.
So yeah, some type of zone. That could mean I'm taking a half of the field, like they're going to play 2 invert, and I'm like got to cover the whole half of the field. That means I could be playing regular 2, or then I've got the flats. Like it could mean we have some type of zone coverage. Okay. So looking at eyes, where are the defender's eyes? And that's going to tell you what his responsibility is. And once you understand his responsibility, you'll be able to eliminate pre-snap what coverages are not based on where the typical alignment and stuff is. Okay. Then we get to leverage and stance. I've kind of already mentioned some of this based on the example I just showed or I talked about. But okay, let's talk about stance first because I've kind of already talked about it. If I'm squared up to the receiver, what coverage do you think I'm playing?
Man.
Man, okay. And butt to the sideline, kind of sideways, so like kind of standing like this if the sideline's behind me. Zone. Right? Exactly. So we can look at stance to determine what the corner is going to do, and then that eliminates coverages. So that's stance. Well, let's talk about leverage. So with leverage, we have 2 different types of leverage we can talk about. We could talk about the numbers of a corner, like numbers of the corner that are on that side. So like if we have a 2 receiver set and we've got numbers, they've got more numbers than us, like 3 receiver or 3 corners or like a linebacker and 2 corners, things like that, we'd be outmanned. But in terms of leverage, we're talking about where are they shaded. So for example, if we're going to zone coverage, where do you think they're going to be shaded to the receiver? Do you think they're going to be shaded outside, inside, or man up?
Man up.
So they could be man up to outside. Why?
So they can't beat them.
Yep. So they can't beat them. But where is the cornerback's help? Where is the cornerback's help if they're playing zone coverage?
Safe.
They have a safety over top. But if they protect outside, they have somebody covering their inside. If
Linebacker?
yeah, they would have a linebacker covering their inside. If they're protecting more inside, they have the outside line to protect them because obviously receiver can't run out of bounds unless they're forced out of bounds. But you still have help over to this side of the field, or they feel like they're athletic enough to go make that play. So we have inside shade, head up, outside. Inside and outside shades are typically zone coverage. If they're straight up, it's going to be man to man. Make sense?
Yeah.
So repeat what I basically just said very quickly. What is our Dell technique?
So that would be D is depth. So that's just saying how far is off. Like if
How
he's
far
close,
who's off?
The cornerback.
Corner. There you go.
And if he's closer, that means he's in man. But if he's farther back, he can't really press, so he's in zone.
Well, and yes, I'll stop you there real quick. If he's pressed, he could still be playing zone because remember, if we're playing cover 2 zone, he's got flat responsibility, so he could still play.
Yeah.
He could still play zone. But more often than not, you know for sure he can't play man coverage 10 yards deep. So that's why we still have eyes, leverage, and stance we look at. So then move on to eyes. Summarize eyes real quick.
So based off of his eyes, like if his eyes is dead up on you or dead up on the receiver, then that means he's most likely playing man. But if like his eyes is kind of halfway there on the you know what I'm saying, on the receiver,
on the quarterback, running back, whatever's in the backfield, and on the receiver,
yeah, then that probably means that you're playing zone. And with leverage and stance, like stance, if his butt is facing the sideline, then he's playing zone.
More than likely zone, yeah.
If he's dead up, he's most likely playing man.
Okay, and that's stance. So what about leverage?
And leverage, I had wrote it down.
Yeah, so leverage, that is where the cornerback lines up compared to the receiver. So head up, outside, or
inside. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So those are ways or little details that we can look at pre-snap. Little details we can look at pre-snap to ensure what we think we are seeing is what we're seeing. Okay? So we've talked about data gathering and planning. We've talked about the Dell technique. I'm going to leave the 3 C's for the last thing we talk about, but let's get into talking about coverages now. So we were just talking about Dell technique, depth, eyes, leverage of the corner. And now let's get into some coverage breakdown. So we'll start off the simple base cover 0. And where we're going to see it and what we'll typically see. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw out a 2-by-2 formation on offense. All right. So just 2-by-2 doubles. I called this ace in my air raid offense that I was in. But let's go ahead and draw up cover 0. So let's just say they are just running a 4-man front. Actually, let's move this H in a little bit so we can put this on this. All right. So here's a pretty good example of cover 0 of what you would see if we were going this formation to this.
Okay.
what biggest tell of cover zero is what? When we're sitting here at quarterback, there's nothing back here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got no safeties deep. Everybody essentially creates what we call a flat seven. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Flat seven, where our corners, our safeties, our linebackers are all in a flat line. Because these guys have man-to-man responsibilities. And then typically one of these two linebackers will have the quarterback in responsibility. And then the other one is typically blitzing. So what type of routes are good against cover zero? What do you think?
I think like post goals, some in the backfield since there's no safety up top to really pick it off.
Potentially. So before we really kind of get into routes that are good against it, let's talk about where you're going to see cover zero. Typically, you're never really going to see cover zero when you're at the 50-yard line midfield. So that takes away like posts and things like that. Mm-hmm. So you're typically going to see cover zero when you're within like the 5-yard line, the 10-yard line, where they're trying to press everybody, condense the field together, and basically try to force you to beat them with your legs or your arm. And so essentially any man beater is good against this. So since you're going to see this in the red zone, score zone, any man beater is going to be good against this coverage. So fades are great. Slants are great. Against man coverage. I mean, obviously, if you have time, whip routes, things like that are good against man coverage. Out of the backfield, angles, option routes, those are going to be good against man coverage. However, you're not going to have a lot of time for anything that's going to take a while to occur. And here's another thing, too. Arrows are typically good, too, against them if your running back is better than the linebacker that is going to be on him. So with these, in my opinion, I'm always taking fades and I'm always taking slants because I know my guy can use his hands and beat the press and get open there, and knowing that everybody else is flowing with whatever's happening. So I love fades and I love slants against it because you got to be able to get the ball out of your hands and get it out. Now, with cover zero, since we have no safeties deep, everybody's manned up one-on-one, and everybody else is blitzing. So we've got 6 blitzing and only 5 blocking. Okay. So this is where you are going to be hot. So what is hot? Hot basically means you have an unblocked blitzer. Let's just say the lineman get the end, get this mic, the center gets the nose, this guy gets the tackle, this guy gets the end. Who's the unblocked defender? This will linebacker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got to understand who is our hot and where is he coming from. This case, he is coming from our right side, right up this B gap in between the guard and the tackle. So if we, for example, let's just erase this whip route for a second. if we had double slants called to this side, where do you think I'm throwing now?
That top. No, that bottom.
I mean, it's really KYP, know your personnel.
Yeah.
Because either way, these guys are man coverage. Whoever you feel like is going to win. I mean, but if we're talking like in a perfect world,
That one.
this guy is your hot because he's the closest to you and he's replacing the space
Yeah.
of the will linebacker. So wherever you are replacing the space of a blitzing backer or a blitzing safety, that is going to be where ideally your hot would be. So tell me what a hot is.
A hot is basically that unblocked man who kind of slips through.
Yep. And who's responsible for the hot player?
You
Quarterback. Yep. And we beat them how?
getting the ball out
Getting the ball out quick and getting it where?
to the closest man.
To the closest man that is vacating the space that he's coming from. Because we know if he's blitzing and he's on us, we know what space he's supposed to occupy. So throw it right to that space because now he's no longer there. Make sense? All right. So that is base cover zero. Any questions on cover zero?
Nah.
Okay. So again, any cover zero you're typically going to see in the red zone, in the score zone, because no one, especially in high school football, doesn't want to have a safety, at least a safety deep, with the way offenses are now, the way mobile quarterbacks are. So again, these are things you're going to see in the red zone. So our next coverage is called cover zero hole. All right. So cover zero hole, again, I'll just draw up 2 by 2. And again, we'll go and draw 4 down linemen. And then draw our flat 7. So now, zero hole is typically run within the 8-yard line to the goal line, especially if you have an athletic linebacker that can kind of play coverage, but kind of like spy the quarterback. So the only difference is now we have a hole player somewhere. So everybody's manned up, man on man. So corner, safety, Sam linebacker, all on those 3 there. Boom and boom, manned up. This guy's blitzing, that guy's blitzing. Now let's talk about the linebackers. So with hole, one of these players is going to do what we call a hole coverage. So he's basically just going to sit here and patrol this area. So when I draw it out, it looks like he's in coverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I try to balance this thing up again, I'll show you more kind of what I mean. All right. There we go. All right. So with a hole player, he's not necessarily in coverage. He's kind of like if you play Madden, like the quarterback spy. He's going to kind of sit in an area and watch the quarterback's eyes and just kind of like basketball 2-3 zone shuffle. He's just going to shuffle left to right wherever quarterback is flowing or wherever the receivers are flowing to try to be an extra kind of position of coverage just to be able to make a play on something. And so whoever is not the hole player is going to blitz. So how do we tell who the hole player is? The hole player is the one that looks like he's not going to blitz. So a blitzing guy is typically going to be 1 foot in front of the other, eyes in the backfield, ready kind of like antsy, especially in high school football, antsy to kind of jump on. A hole player is going to kind of try to look antsy, but you know he's going to kind of have a little bit of like hesitation of, oh, I kind of need to fake it and then get back into my zone.
Yeah.
That would be zero hole. So again, what's good against zero hole? Slants, fades, whips, anything that is going to beat, especially these outside coverage, because we know we have the hole player here. Glances are still good too, and things like that. Now, obviously, we have to be aware with slants, if we have a guy that's kind of patrolling the middle of the field right at the linebacker depth, we know we're throwing into an area. So this is where we have to start using our eyes to be able to manipulate him to go to one side. Typically, if it's 3-on-2, he's probably going to more patrol to this side, knowing that we can throw a slant backside.
Mm-hmm.
So the flow over here will probably pull him more over here and go there. But that's just going to be different play design. Okay? Makes
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to talk about zero rob. And I'll try to make this quick. So, zero rob is actually getting into more cover one. Because now responsibilities don't necessarily change. Responsibilities aren't necessarily changing, but we have a different way of looking at things. Okay? So now we come out in a one high safety look, and these guys are playing man. If this was the case, what coverage do you think this would be? Cover one, right?
One.
Everybody's manned up and one safety deep that would probably have a zone. Well, in Rob, these guys are blitzing. So we still get now the same number of blitzers, but now this safety is coming down to Rob, which is essentially the same thing as a hole player, but he's coming from the top down, as opposed from coming from a linebacker spot down to sit and hole it. He's now coming from the top down to Rob. So cover zero Rob and cover zero hole are the same, but it is presented in a different way because a robber is typically someone who's coming down to rob as opposed to a linebacker that's going up to fill in a hole. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It says I've got 6 minutes and 30 seconds left. If it pushes us off, go back and just rejoin using the same link, and then I'll get you invited back in and all that.
Okay.
But again, slants and fades are going to be best against zero, regardless of if it's rob, hole, or anything like that. But again, we just have to be aware of who is the robber or who is the hole player, and understand that we need to flow him in the direction opposite of where we want to work. So if we want to throw the slant right here, we need to try to make sure we get our eyes over this way to force him to kind of play this more over here, thinking he's got us one, and then we can flip our eyes and deliver that ball right there. Or vice versa. If we want to throw the slant over here or the fade over here, we got to get it out quick so he can't come here and get back all the way over top.
Okay.
So essentially a rob or a hole player is kind of like an extra free player that's doing other work on the field. All right. Now let's get into cover one. But before we get into cover one, what I'm going to go ahead and do, just so it doesn't cut us off mid-session. All right. Got everything back. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So now let's jump into cover one. So obviously we just talked about cover zero rob. where it's going to come out looking like cover one, and that free safety has the robber responsibility of coming down and trying to rob the middle of the field. Well, now let's get into cover one. So it's going to look exactly like it, but now responsibilities are going to be a little different. In cover one, you're going to see cover one anywhere on the field. You can see it in the red zone. You can see it at midfield. You can see it backed up in your own red zone, and any part of the field. Cover one is where a defensive coordinator is saying, hey, Tristan, I don't trust you to be able to throw the ball over our corners. Our man-to-man corners are just better than your receivers, and your arm isn't that good. So I'm trying to get pressure on you and force you to beat us, as opposed to trying to sit back in coverage and try to let you pick us apart. So let's talk about cover one. So I'll try to give us a little extra room here because we've got more of a field to work with. So again, draw up 2 by 2 and go from there. Again, we're just going to draw up a base 4-man front, and we can talk about our 3-man fronts and things like that later, but there's not really much that changes. All right. So typically, this is going to be what a cover one looks like.
Okay.
Very similarly, we're going to have, instead of a flat 7, we're going to have a flat 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have a flat 6. All right. Our corners, just like in cover 0, they're typically going to be pressed, maybe 5 yards off, but they're going to be somewhere between pressed and 5 yards off, squatted, eyes right on the receiver that they're guarding and nowhere else. They're going to be facing them. When we talk about the Dell technique, they're going to be there. So when we come out of the huddle, we break the huddle. Let's just say all slants on 1, ready, break. We break the huddle. We're looking out. We got one safety in the middle of the field. This guy is somewhere between 12 and 15 yards deep. And he is dead in the middle of our formation. Like, he's not shading to one side. He's not shading to another. He is dead center. Okay? Then our eyes go immediately to our corners. Like I just talked about, corners are going to be dead, head up on the receiver, chest facing the receiver, and ready to within 0 to 5 yards. 0 to 5 yards. Ready to play man coverage. Okay? So when we talk about coverage responsibilities in cover 1, since this is the man day, we're talking about man coverage, it's going to be man coverage. So we already know our corners are both squatted, looking at those receivers. We've got man coverage right up top here. Now, when we were playing cover 0, we had both of our safeties down in that flat 7 to be able to press or be able to play in man coverage our running back or our slot receiver or our opposite slot receiver. Well, now we've got one safety in the middle of the field. So now what happens? Linebackers have to shift to take that responsibility. So now we have a linebacker on a slot receiver. We now have another linebacker on a running back. And then the other safety that is coming down, he is still playing man-to-man coverage with another slot receiver.
Okay.
So we have 5 guys covering 5, which then, when we look at our box, which is the tackle to tackle, what linemen and linebackers do we have in this space here? Of our 5 defenders, we have 4 guys. Actually, excuse me, we've got 5 guys who can blitz. Got the end, got the nose, got the other tackle, got the end. Those 4 we already know are blitzing. And then this guy can come in and blitz as well. And typically, if it is base cover 0, they're blitzing. They're trying to get pressure and trying to allow their man coverage to win a battle. Okay? So now, what is our safety doing in the middle of the field? Our safety in the middle of the field is basically trying to be a center fielder in baseball. He's trying to just basically sit back, look at the whole picture, and try to soak up whatever's happening and go help there, and nothing gets over him. But that means we have some vacated areas. So, obviously, when we talk about what routes are good, fades by our outside guys are amazing against cover one. Slants by the inside are great against cover one. Do you remember what I told you earlier about when you're hot? What's great to throw there?
Oh, that slant.
That slant from the
slant from the inside.
Yeah, from where?
The inside.
Well, yeah,
from where the dude was hot, where he that space
where the linebacker is blitzing from. So in this case, again, we have 5 for 5, so we have a lineman to block everybody. But if this Mike linebacker is going to blitz from our right side again, we got a slant right there that can fill his void, and boom, we create a big play there. And it's still before we get into the safety's window where he's really trying to pay attention to. But we talk about fade routes on the outside. Are great against cover one as well. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Because we're using the safety's assignment against him. We have one guy trying to cover 56.5 yards sideline to sideline.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he can cover all 56.5? No. He's got to pick and choose one and make a decision and sprint, and he still may not make a play. Because if this guy beats the man coverage, we have this area to hit, or if this guy beats the man coverage, we've got this area to hit.
Yeah.
We also have middle of the field to play with too, especially where the linebacker is vacating a space because of where he's blitzing.
Okay.
So the one thing that can beat you or beat any of these plays is pressure getting home now.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Jalen Ramsey on the outside that our guy can't beat him, and the safety can get over top.
Yeah.
This guy beats him. If this guy beats him now, we got this space to work with. This guy beats him now, we got this space to work with. But again, if you think with your brain here, if this corner gets beat and this safety triggers to come over here and cover him, but this guy still wins too, we've got this guy, right? Because triggered to go over here because he got beat quick. And a little later, we can look at our eyes here, flip our eyes
shift back over
and throw it back over because this guy's now already committed there. But that is again going to be play design, where if your play says we've got a slant from a slot guy and a fade over here, like even if we were running just like slant, fade, like inside slants, outside fades, you could have that, but you got to make that quick, good decision.
Yeah.
To take your eyes to whoever you believe is the best guy to beat man coverage. So find your best guy. Playmakers make plays. So find your best playmaker and make that happen. And if he gets beat, but the safety triggers, you've got all this space over here to be able to hitch up, flip your ankle eye, and then launch it to this guy a little bit further downfield as he beats man coverage. But then if we know we're blitzing, like let's just say this Mike linebacker has the running back in motion. Now the will is blitzing. Now we throw the slant to the left.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to use their assignment against that. Make sense?
Yeah.
So again, I love slants. I love fades against cover one, and that's base cover one. So the three main places that we can win here are the outsides, so outside left or right, wherever the safety doesn't choose, in the middle of the field. Just for your information too, if this guy is like if the running back like can easily like if he's a speed demon and can beat this linebacker to the outside, we can still beat guys in this area too. So we have these areas over here as well, but it's not as guaranteed because if this Z, for example, were to beat in man coverage and he's triggering and running here, he might see somebody go into his area and he's just saying, I hope to God this safety is going to cover me up and I'm just going to bail on my assignment and try to take the flat here. So the flats are still options, but they're not as good as the outsides or the middle of the field against base cover one. That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. So let's go on to the next variation of cover one. So we're going to move on to cover one hold. All right. Again, we're just going to draw up a 2x2 formation. All right. So I've got cover one hold drawn up here. Yeah, I need something I would say better next time. All right, but so I've got everything drawn up for cover one hold, very similarly. So just base, what does this look like to you?
Like cover one to me.
It looks just like cover one. So there's going to be subtle differences. So again, we break the huddle. We're like we clap, call play, clap, get out of the huddle. We look. We see one safety middle of the field, so middle of the field closed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get our eyes to the corners to look at the Dell technique, depth, eyes, leverage, and everything speaks the same to us. It says, hey, this is cover one. Okay? So, again, safety middle of the field. He's going to have his deep field where he's just playing center field. Our outside corners are squatted within 0 to 5 yards to play man coverage. We have a linebacker out on a slot receiver, which again should be stealing candy from a baby. If they want to put a linebacker on our slot receiver,
yeah,
good luck to them. All right. Now, our other safety on the opposite side of the field is still covering there. And now we already know our 4D linemen are blitzing. But now let's look at what's happening with these linebackers. So if you remember from what we were talking about when we talked about cover zero hole, what did one of the linebackers do in cover zero hole?
They stayed back.
Yeah, so they stayed back and they were trying to play like the middle of the field just as kind of like a quarterback spy, just trying to see everything and alert to something. So a hole player is going to stay a hole player. So we need to figure out which one of these linebackers is covering the running back in man coverage.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that?
Whichever one doesn't look like they're really finna, or now whichever one looks like they're finna, you know what I'm saying? Not blitz. I don't know. Or their eyes. Their eyes. See,
Where are their eyes going to be looking? If they have the running back in man coverage, where are their eyes going to be looking?
Dead at the running back.
Dead at the running back. So in this case, I'm going to say this will linebacker because he's head up over top of it. So again, we go back to use the Dell technique, but now with the linebackers.
Yeah.
The depth, the eyes, the leverage. In particularly the eyes and the leverage. The eyes are on the running back, and then he is going to try to be as lined up as humanly possible to take care of the running back in whatever direction he goes. So he's going to try to stay square up with that running back, and he's going to have his eyes on the running back to make sure he never misses where he goes, whether he's running a wheel, whether he's running an option route, whether he's running an angle, like a Texas angle. He's going to try to stay manned up with him so he doesn't miss anywhere that he goes. So now we just have one linebacker left. Typically, if we were going cover one, what is he doing? He's blitzing and we're hot. Well, now, if we're going cover one hole, like if you saw in cover one, he's kind of like antsy, 1 foot forward, trying to like jump, make a blitz happen, things like that. Now he's maybe a little more cautious and he's ready to put that front foot in the ground and kind of back up a little bit to play the hole. So again, what he's going to do is, and again, I'm drawing it more like it's a coverage. Again, it's more like he's just trying to play a quarterback spy and just look what's happening. But his responsibility now is to just flow to the middle of the field. Because remember what I told you about the weaknesses in cover one? Just base cover one, where were the weaknesses?
You know, the outsides.
In the middle of the field.
Yeah, in the middle of the field. Yeah. Because he can't be everywhere at once.
Well, the outsides are the issue. The outsides are free game because this safety can't cover 56 yards sideline to sideline. But the middle of the field was open because these guys are in man coverage and guys are blitzing, and nobody's covering the middle of the field before the safety. So that's still an issue. So cover one hole is a coach's response, or is a coach's idea to help guard this middle of the field.
Yeah.
Okay. But what he still can't defend is what? Just like in base cover one,
fade.
He can't cover the extreme outsides to the sideline because this safety has to choose one or the other. And whichever one he doesn't choose is now the open space, unless this man coverage corner is Jalen Ramsey and the best corner in the history of the universe, or Travis Hunter or whoever. Okay? So our weaknesses are going to be the outsides here. But hey, now we've got this Mike linebacker sitting here kind of flowing in the middle. So the middle of the field's now kind of taken up a little bit. But if this safety flows deeper to try to get a bigger center fielder type eye, this guy is still going to be within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. This hole player, a hole player isn't like a Tampa coverage or anything like that. He's just trying to stay 5 yards and just kind of flow left to right. So we can still have the deeper, but not so deep middle of the field away from where this Mike linebacker flows to. Okay? Now, because this guy's here, I'll draw it with the red marker. If he knows I blitzed last play and this slant got hit for a 40-yard gain, he might try to trigger and come over here to try to block that. And if he does that, what do we have open? The middle of the field right here, where he vacates. So our weaknesses in cover one hole are, again, the same as cover one, where the extreme outsides, wherever the safety cannot cover, and wherever the Mike linebacker vacates, similar to the blitzing. Make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
And then, because now we do have an extra guy in coverage, this guy is going to create traffic for our will linebacker to cover. So let's just say we motion our guy out and run like a screenplay or something here.
Mm-hmm.
This will linebacker is going to get caught up in our friend Mike, in our Mike linebacker friend over here, and he's going to struggle to get there.
Yeah.
So, because of the extra hole player, we have the flats more open than base cover one. Okay,
Mhm.
the biggest weaknesses are the outsides and the flats. So if I'm rating them, 1s and 2s, and then number 3 is not necessarily a weakness because that's what they're trying to stop, but wherever the Mike linebacker vacates is going to be another weak zone.
Okay.
Any questions? All right. Now let's talk about our last one before we talk about the 3 C's. And it'll kind of put everything together and in a perspective for you to take this man coverage day and go from there. So now let's talk about the final cover or base cover one coverage. All right.
Okay.
Cover one rod. So if we draw up our 2x2 formation again, and our 4 down linemen, now I did on accident draw the Y and the Z a lot more condensed, but it'll be fine. But again, we break the huddle, eyes to the safety, middle of the field is closed because we got a free safety standing back there. We get eyes to the corners to look at depth, eyes, and leverage. They look just like cover one just like cover one hole, just like cover one base. Everything looks the same. But, so let's just go through our checklist. These guys with their eyes are all manned up here.
Okay.
Our will linebacker is eyeing this guy. Our will linebacker is still eyeing the running back. And so we obviously assume that this will linebacker has got the running back in man coverage. We know our 4 down linemen are going to blitz. So then where do our eyes need to go now? We've already looked at the safety. We've already confirmed that the corners are in man coverage. We confirmed that one of our linebackers is in man coverage with the running back. What coverage do we think this is?
Man.
We think it's man. We already know it's man, but we think it's just one. So what do we have to do now? We take our eyes to this Mike linebacker. This Mike linebacker is looking like he's going to blitz, like he's trigger happy. He's ready to blitz. So we say he's blitzing.
Okay.
All right. Which makes us hot because we don't have somebody to block him. Yeah, because we don't have somebody to block him. But right before the snap, when we take our eyes up to the safety just to look at the middle of the field again, this safety starts creeping up. He like starts walking down.
So he's replacing that linebacker spot.
Exactly right. So just like in cover one hole, we had someone playing the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm.
This time the safety is robbing, so he's coming from the top down to play that hole coverage in the middle of the field. So cover one rob is what you're going to go back and see in the red zone score zone. Why? What coverage is this identical? What coverage is this identical to?
Cover one.
Well, no, the responsibilities based on what you've drawn up. Which one does this look like after you draw them up?
It look like cover zero rob.
Zero rob. So it's a way to disguise cover zero.
Okay.
So they make you think, oh, he's playing cover one. I've got middle of the field open, and then you've got a safety running back into that zone and picking you off whenever you try to throw the hot defender.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what the weaknesses are for cover one rob. Again, we talked about the safety. The safety no longer is covering the middle of the field because he's coming to rob the insides. So we know for sure we have the outsides because now there's no one even covering sideline to sideline.
Yeah.
There's no one even covering deep middle like on the goal line. So we have behind the safety. Because this safety is now coming in to rob something, we can now use his leverage against him. So if he comes down to play over here, we have this area. If he comes down to play over here, we have this area.
Okay.
So we use his eyes and use his trigger points against him. But we can no longer throw it to the flats anymore. Why?
Because they blitz.
Well, we could still throw it to the flats if they're blitzing, because if we get something to the flat now and we beat this guy,
oh yeah, you get upfield.
We're fine. You can get upfield before the blitz hits us. But what makes it harder now to do that?
Oh, that's safety?
Because what's his responsibility? What's his responsibility?
Take dude's spot. Take the linebacker spot.
Yeah, well, he's trying to take the linebacker's responsibility, come inside the box, and just roam and be whatever he wants to be. So if he's that running back get out, what he's trying to do is he's going to trigger and go to him now.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's terrible. You just have to KYP, know your personnel. If you know your running back is speedy and you know your running back's bigger, faster, stronger than that safety, and you know he can beat that will linebacker in man coverage as well, by all means do it, because better players beat scheme every time.
Okay.
But if we're talking about true weaknesses, our outsides and our deep line is going to be the weaknesses. Now, let me mention this too. Whenever we throw something in the deep middle of the field, we need to give it a level 2 loft. We can't throw level 3 because, again, this is in the red zone score zone. If we throw a level 3 throw, it's going out of the back of the end zone, whatever. But we got to give this some touch and get it over this safety, because remember, the safety's coming down here. He can still jump and make a play on something. So we got to be able to give the ball some arc, but we need to understand that wherever this guy goes, we gotta move and throw to where he is not. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So that is going to be our coverage talk for the day. So we talked about all the main man coverages. are all the main 1 or 0 high coverages. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I want to talk to you about, and I'll make this one quick, is the 3 C's. Okay.
Okay.
So this gets even, and I want to talk about the 3 C's more in depth once we really have a playbook in your hand and things like that. But it's something that we definitely need to talk about anyway. And this is kind of what I've already been talking about. So I've got 3 C's written up here. I didn't write them very big, but we've got concept, conflict, check down. So concept, conflict, check down.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason why I want to talk more about it once you have your playbook in your hand is we have concepts, we have route combinations, we have different types of plays that are good for different coverages. So what is good versus man coverage? What is good versus 1 high man coverage? What is good versus 0 high man coverage? What is good versus 2 high zone, 2 high man? And cover 4, cover 6, different versions of coverages. But where I really want to spend my time is talking about conflicts. What we were just talking about was creating conflict. We need to find the player that our route concept conflicts the most. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So whenever we drew the cover 1 and I said, hey, we've got man coverage here and the safety's got to cover the whole field, our conflict player is who? The safety.
Yeah.
Because the safety has to make a decision, who am I covering? So we find the conflict player with whatever our concept creates, and that becomes what we attack. And then last but not least, we got to have the mental processing and quick processing to find the conflict player, make him wrong. And if he does a good job, because that's how sports are, sometimes he can do a great job because that's his job to do a great job at his role. If he does that and beats us that play, we got to find another answer and find it quick. So we need to know where the check down is. So that is, if again, when we talk about hots, knowing when you're hot and knowing when to catch that ball, get the ball out of your hand quickly to a vacated player in a zone, where the zone that he's vacating by blitzing. Or if we have a route concept, we know they're going cover 1 and everybody blitzes, we know we have the running back going out to the flat. We got to get to him now, again, like a hot, and get the ball to him in a check down. Just take something out of nothing. All right. Okay. So that is everything right there. And that is session number 1. So any questions you have for me?
You made it a lot easier. Like when you broke it down, like the robber and the hole, and you made it a lot easier, even from the 3 C's. It definitely
So the biggest two, like obviously you've got the drawings of different coverages now, but one of the biggest things I want you to take out of this is getting your eyes to the safety immediately following the break of the snap, just deciphering, is it 2 high, 1 high? So when what I'm going to start referring to it as is middle of the field open or middle of the field closed. Middle of the field open would be 2 safeties or no safeties, because the middle of the field would be open with 2 safeties or no safeties. Middle of the field closed is 1 safety. So he's right in the middle of the field. We can't throw it there. So we find that. Then we use our Dell technique, depth, eyes, leverage, stance, to look at the corners. What are they doing? Based on the depth, eyes, leverage, and stance, what coverage are they probably playing? Then get our eyes to the Mike linebacker. And that's where we've got to study this and understand what guys are going to be looking like typically, because that is going to make us decide quicker, this is what coverage they're probably in. And because we only have a 40-second play clock. So, and it's going to take probably 10, 15, 20 seconds to get the play call it in the huddle, and get going, even in an air raid style offense where we're going hand signals and all this other kind of stuff to get everybody getting and going to where they need to be. But then when we talk about coverage, our 3 C's are crucial. It's what concept are we running? Who is the conflict player? and where is our check down. If we go into every play having an answer for all three C's, mental processing gets faster. We identify what the defense is doing quicker. We know who the conflict player is. We know where our eyes need to be. And that's where we can take that next step to being able to anticipate throwing windows and throw the ball before the guy even breaks. And then he just breaks perfectly to where you've already thrown the ball.
Okay.
All right. So if you have any questions, feel free, text me, do all that good stuff, and take some time, look over it. What I will say is every session I'm going to try to challenge you to grow mentally. So what I want you to do is look over all your notes, or reorganize them, make them look even neater. And then tomorrow, I want you to come up with 3 questions you want to ask me based on those notes and things like that. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, I will see you Saturday morning, and then obviously next Wednesday after that for Chalk Talk number 2.
I bet.
All right, I'll see you.
All right.
All right, have a good night.
You too.